Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the Homeless Commission, our first time meeting in the afternoon. Let's start by taking roll call.
Michelle Moore, Jean McVeigh,
Present.
Ken Everett,
Here.
Shelley Briggs-Loosely,
Here.
Here.
Ben Titone,
Here.
Dane Zahner.
Before we approve the minutes, I'd like to welcome Betty Hyatt and Dane Zahner to your first Homeless Commission meeting. Thank you for joining us. Now we need to approve the minutes from February 23rd.
I move to approve. A second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the February 23rd minutes. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Minutes pass. Do we have audience participation today? Okay, we have 5. So give them 3 minutes each because we only do 15. Is that what I should do?
Just do a solid 3 minutes on the timer.
Yeah, no warning, okay. Okay. We have 5 people that want to speak today, so you will each get 3 minutes. And to start, we have John Berman, and if you would come to the mic, tell us your name and your address.
John Berman, 542 West Warren Court.
Gotta talk right into that sucker.
I don't want to. I didn't get a chance to read all of the notes on the private camping, so I'm a little bit concerned about that. I don't want you to make it so restrictive that you really only have one sanctioned private camping site. Is that right? I mean, person. Is that correct? That's correct. So if you make that, you're targeting that person in those rules. That does not seem quite right. One comment. The other comment is the other city unsanctioned campsite is Deer Creek. So unless those rules apply to Deer Creek, how can you apply them to anybody else? I mean, that is the biggest issue the Homeless Commission have is Deer Creek. Let's admit that. That's where it is. And until that is related to, I don't understand what else we can do. I mean, that is the problem. Let's fix that problem before we decide we want to do something else. And I'm hoping some of you have been following what Bernie Witter is doing in Grants Pass. Grants Pass, similar sized place, does not have a Deer Creek there that they have to relate to. They are working with Bernie to do something completely different. I hope you're following that. I think that is a great option for what we need to do. I guess that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Joshua James.
Yeah, my name is Joshua James. I live on 4125 Stella Street, and I came to talk about the potential change to private camping rules as well. I think that there's kind of 2 main options right now. Like, there's already some camping rules that the city has approved, and then there's already some rules for campers who are not in private camps that the city has approved. And I think that the rules that are in place for people who aren't in a private camp are being followed less. And I feel like changing it and making it harder for people who are privately trying to help people have somewhere safe to sleep is putting the cart before the horse. I don't think that there's maybe a problem with it down the road, but I think that the city needs to work on having a safe spot with porta potties and stuff as an alternate option first. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Joshua. Pamela Pierce? I'm not sure that I can't read. Pamela.
Hi, this is all new to me. I am Pamela Pierce. I'm a 30-year veteran of the military. I lived in Roseburg pretty much most of my life. I live on Hamilton Street, 1721 Southeast Hamilton Street, and I'm inquiring about them wanting to put a homeless camp in the Southgate area where the trucking area was that's been sold. And I'm speaking on behalf of the neighborhood. There's several little kids that are there. I have every compassion for the homeless, but there's little kids and bus stops there. There's a bus stop at Southgate right there. There's a bus stop at Main and Hamilton. There's several bus stops at Rice and Hamilton. And you have little kids that ride their bikes and scooters and everywhere. And I've seen what's behind Waldron's, and if they put that there, I'm afraid it's going to be the same thing. What if little kids get in there? I see where they put a fence up there, but it doesn't stop children. If they want to do that, then do it structured-wise. But I'm speaking on behalf of the kids and parents that, this is what I've heard, though. I've heard they want to drive us out, drive our property value down, get us to sell our house so they can redevelop it. That's what's going on all over Facebook anyway. But I own my house outright. I paid it off in 2012, but I have nowhere to go. If they're trying to drive me out, where am I going to go? So I'm asking to put some more information out so that people with kids in the neighborhood could know what to do. How to avoid that area, because school bus stops are there unless they change the bus routes. But you got people, kindergarten bus stops there, grade school stops there. It's they redistrict it for Joe Lane, so bus stops there for Joe Lane and the high school. And so I'm just asking, give us some information about it. Put some information about, so I realize that the property there, because I saw it on a map, is actually county property. The Parrot House area and the Redway area is actually county property. At least the map shows it, where I don't know the zoning from way before I was born, but so I'm just asking on behalf of the little kids. There's little kids going up and down the neighborhood all the time. So if you guys can give us some information about it in that area, we would really appreciate it, because what if I'm probably going to piss some people off, but what if one of those little kids gets down there and gets a hold of needles and stuff like that? Mom, look what I found. What's going to happen? And somebody's going to probably have some lawsuits. But so if they're going to do that, they have to do it in a clean way. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Nikki, did you want to make a response?
So I just want to address that. So the city looked at that property, they held a public meeting, and they decided to pass on that property. And it has since sold to a private company. So that article that came out was completely false, and the city's not pursuing it. And it really was meant to defame some political figures and other people, the way I see it. In my opinion. And so it's completely false, and it's caused a lot of upset for people in that neighborhood. And I just want to assure you that the city is not pursuing that property for a homeless camp. That decision was made in a public meeting, and we've moved on from it.
I just have one, it was on Facebook.
I get it.
Where the friend of our county commissioner bought the property, and he wants to rezone it. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I seen the article. That's all I got about that.
What is true is what Nikki just said.
Yes, we looked at it. They held a public meeting. The neighborhood came out. The council decided to forego that property, and we've moved on. They're not continuing. There are no more discussions happening about that property as far as the city's concerned for a homeless camp.
Thank you, Nikki. Christine Martin.
My name's Christine Martin, and I reside at 0 Masella Street. I'm the camp host at Bernie Woodard's camp. My 3 grandchildren play every day right across the street from my camp. If you guys close down his camps, where am I going to live? You want me to go to the point? There's, my neighborhood's safe. I know a lot of people there. I go to church. I volunteer in the community. And I'm trying to do everything I can to provide a safe, nice environment for people to sleep without worrying about losing all their stuff, or people that drink, or people that do drugs. There's hypodermic needles all over in this county. It doesn't involve just homeless camps. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Bernie Woodard.
Bernie Woodard, Elk Island Trading Group, 3261 Northeast Follett Street, Roseburg, Oregon. Hello. You guys have got a lot of documents from me the last few days. Hopefully you got copies of all of them. We submitted all 3 of our camps. We've submitted under Oregon state law to 197739, I believe, 783, sorry, to cause them to go under the Oregon state provision instead of the tent camping resolution number. And we qualify for those things, and we hope that the commission will look at that. It was talked about Grants Pass earlier, just real quick on that. Grants Pass has no camping in the parks, not one camp anywhere in their parks. People can walk in those parks. It's beautiful. That Easter egg hunt yesterday, successful. That's the way parks are supposed to be, not what we have going on in Roseburg. We've provided 3 tent camps with over 16,000 nights or days where people stay day and night in our camps over the last 3 years. The changes on this agenda, I just saw last Thursday, I think it was, and started writing comments and making changes, because the changes, there are a lot of things there that's not going to work. They create barriers to people having these camps, and we're the only ones that's stepping up and doing it. City nonprofits are not. You can read the agenda item. Nonprofits are not doing it. Churches are not doing it, but we did it. Okay, so if you read through all the documents I've already given to the city, I want to go to the final closing statement of the last one I said. And the changes that are on the agenda, I would say if something is working is something that we have that's working, we shouldn't be trying to figure out how to change it. We have the only system that's working in this city. And why to change it and try to even block us from doing it is just asinine, to create a space where our campers would have to go back into areas like Deer Creek. So accordingly, we respectfully request the following: eliminate the no fee provision that's in the current tent camping resolution 2022-21. What we're ending up doing as a city, this is kind of funny. We make money off of every service there is to homeless people. We've almost stripped them of every bit of dignity they have in every way. We make money off their drug addiction. We make money off their alcohol addiction. We make money off of finding them houses. We make money off of going and checking to see if they have HIV or anything else. We make money off of them not being housed. We make a percentage, the amount of money that we bring in, and some nonprofits, they get a percentage over that. All of that because of the things that's created by homelessness. And what we don't do is go to the core argument and the core reason of homelessness, is that my time, and provide safe beds. That's what our service is. You guys have the documents. We can go there quickly, or we can keep doing what we're doing now.
Thank you. Right. We're ready for the tent camping update to resolution number 2022-21.
Thank you, Shelley. For this agenda item, I prepared an AIS summary outlining proposed updates to Resolution 2022-21, which governs the city's tent camping program. As part of developing these updates, I incorporated input from multiple sources, including feedback from city staff based on implementation changes we've seen over the past few years, as well as input from an active local operator. Mr. Woodard was kind enough to provide detailed written feedback based on his direct on-the-ground experience operated managed camping sites. The goal of these proposed updates is to address areas where the current resolution lacks clarity or creates operational challenges while still maintaining the original intent of providing a humane and structured temporary shelter option. At this point, I don't necessarily anticipate that this item will be motioned forward to cancel at this meeting, and that's okay. The intent is really to have a policy level discussion, gather feedback, and identify any areas the commission would like to see refined. If the commission does feel ready to make a recommendation, that's great. And if not, we will bring it back with any additional direction or revisions for further discussion at a future meeting. And then I believe that the board chair would like to go through each number one by one on the policy. All right.
Shelley, can I ask a question? This meeting is time limited, correct? Okay. Hour and a half. Okay. I just go till we're out of time. Oh, understood. Should we? Is it feasible to do the rest of the agenda and come back to this so that we can give it as much time as possible till we run out of time? I'm just trying to be, because we could talk about this agenda item for hours and hours, right? And so if we do the other stuff first, we'll know how much time we got. Is that permissible?
You can rearrange the items on the agenda.
Okay. I like the idea. So let's just table the tent camping for the moment and go to any roundtable updates from the commission. That is a time when you give us any updates in your agencies, things that people would want to know. Totally up to you.
I don't really have any updates. We're still, the 511 Stevens is still under remodel, so I won't have any updates until we kind of get done, but I will be letting you guys know when we do.
Aviva Health is hosting the Nonprofit Summit Wednesday and Thursday. And so nonprofit organizations that are interested in attending that, there's still some registrations available.
Nothing? Okay. Sam, nothing for me. Dane, anything?
I did send the Connecting Point data from the Connecting Point team, and I think that's our only update, that we continue to have 5-day operations. We're in Roseburg on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. The most effective one is the outpatient treatment center, where multiple partners are connecting with people that live in the Point area. And the shower trailer that Adapt runs definitely drives the traffic into that location. But that data is, I did not bring a copy with me, but it is downloaded with a record of this meeting. So I would encourage people to look at it. And most of those agencies are doing their best, and that is not financially supported by any measure. It's out of the goodness of the heart of those agencies doing outreach and coordinating those events to make sure people are connected to care. And I think they do a pretty good job at, working through that. UCAN's trying their best to connect with people on housing. The Dream Center's we've been putting some highlights on there of some agencies that are really doing a super job as we get that data.
Thank you, Dane. And moving down the list, business from the commission. Any additional business? It's not business, but I had the opportunity of touring the mission last Tuesday with some other staff people, and it's an amazing operation with 100 beds per night not being used, and then I don't remember the exact number at the Samaritan Inn, but it is a very great resource out there that I wish more people could take advantage of. Our next meeting is May 4th. Then do we want to do informational or wait till the end if there's any time?
So informational is just in your packet so that you have access to it. If you have any questions, let us know.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Ben, thanks for the suggestion. No, that's how I think, but I wasn't sure we could do that at a city public meeting. So back to the tent camping update, We'll go item by item. Did you want to say something, Dane? No. Oh, your light's on.
Oh.
You just push. There you go. Thank you. Jennifer, do you want to start us off exactly where?
Yeah, so number 1 is location and proximity to residential areas.
Are we going through these, or are we going?
One moment.
You want to go through the actual rules, or how do you want to?
I don't know. What's the most efficient to get the most interaction? Jennifer, you've done such a good job on all of this.
Thank you. We can go through the issues and concerns, the rationales, or we can go through the previous camp rules that are currently in place, or we can go through what's currently in place and what's recommended. It's really what you guys would like to hear.
I personally would like to hear the rationale for the changes, and then in order with your, in this format that has your recommendations, point, counterpoint, in order. That way when we're out of time, we can draw a line, and on May 4th, we can pick up where we left off, or however that shakes.
Yeah, does that work for you guys? Okay. So that's the page with some red writing, blue and green. Halfway through the packet. So, item A.
Yeah, so currently tent camping is limited to properties operated by a nonprofit, public or commercial entity and not located within a residential zone, except for church-owned properties already existing within a residential zone. We would like to add or must either meet a 200-foot buffer from properties zoned or used for residential purposes, or be subject to an administrative review with neighborhood
So one of the issues that we've run into when we were first putting this together, when council was considering it, really the thought was that churches were going to be interested in hosting these. And Jennifer's recently done a lot of work surveying churches and found out that we didn't have any that were interested in hosting these. But that was our kind of our mindset going into it. And so with the rule just being residentially zoned properties, we've got camps that have gone in and they've located right next to residentially used properties because they aren't necessarily residentially zoned properties. Hasn't necessarily been an issue, but we have, Stu can speak to it, we have fielded complaints from some of those property owners, and even had one that just up and sold his house and moved out of the neighborhood because he was upset that there was no notification that this was going in their neighborhood, and there was no chance for them to comment on that. So if your neighbor wants chickens, they have to come ask you, and they have to get a permit to get the chickens. But for this particular use, we don't have any neighborhood input at this point. And so that's been a point of contention for neighborhoods where these have been located. And so need to know if we want to continue or how we've been doing it, if we want to put in extra protections for neighborhoods, or if we want to give neighbors the opportunity to comment before something's approved. Does that kind of capture it, Stu? You're the one that actually takes those calls.
No, yeah, that captures it.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the commission? Ben?
If where it says a property is zoned residential, would that capture the entire property, or just like where the residential use was? You know, sometimes you might have a house or an apartment in the middle of a larger parcel. So just trying to imagine a 200-foot radius, and is that from the property or the residential use?
Be from the edge of the property.
And the other thing is we go through these that, sorry, Jennifer, I'm jumping in, but this was not meant that we were necessarily targeting the existing ones. These are just things that we've experienced, and before we approve any additional ones, we'd want to consider these because this is what's happened over the last few years and the things that we've heard from neighborhood feedback. So wanted to bring those forward. It's not meant that if these changes are made, if the current camps don't meet this gets closed down. We haven't even, my brain wasn't going there, so it wasn't what we were. I think it's being interpreted as that's what we're targeting. It's not. It's like this would be for future camps. I think the existing ones would be, for lack of a better term, grandfathered in. But we also want to take the lessons we've learned since those have gone in as far as impacts to neighborhoods and see about if there are tweaks or changes that should be considered. I'm sorry to just jump in, is that okay? Would the
properties that are allowable within the current rules also have to meet the 200-foot minimum rule, or is that an and/or question? Because my experience, just I'm thinking about churches, most of them are on residentially zoned ground and adjacent to residentially zoned ground. So if they are allowed to have them in the existing rules and then also had to satisfy a 200-foot rule from residential, I think it would cancel out their opportunity. So are the openly permitted ones exempt from the 200-foot rule is, I guess, my question. And I know this is all contemplated, so I should have said, is it contemplated that?
Maybe I could help with that one, and then Jennifer, if you want to explain further. I think that the idea was that anyone that would apply, regardless of your zoning, there would be a 200-foot notification. But that being said, there certainly are ways to break that up, right? If you were recommending, hey, this, for example, Mr. Woodard's properties are all commercial zoned properties. If you were saying, hey, we want to do commercial, but then only ones that had some type of residential use that were church owned, or if it was adjacent, there's different ways of being able to look at it. But the idea here was any that applied a 200-foot notification. And I apologize. The word "or" is important, and it's in here twice, and so it kind of speaks to your question. It's this or and that or, not mutually exclusive. So rereading that, I see that that's sort of built in. I don't hate the notification area, by the way. Regardless of what zoning it's in, I think I don't hate the idea of a notice area, even if the notice doesn't necessarily carry any appellate opportunity. I think if we grant appellate opportunity to the notice area, that we won't ever have any of these. And if the intent is to potentially have them exist, then I think we might want to consider a new component or an embedded component, either in this paragraph or another, that talks about the criteria of the appeal, or what criteria they need to answer in their appeal.
Okay, so
the purpose of the notice is solely to provide informational purpose. It doesn't necessarily create a public hearing. The content of the notice would include the address and location of the proposed site, the maximum number of tents proposed, a general description of the proposed operation, contact information for the applicant, and the anticipated approval date. The notice should be mailed at least 14 calendar days prior to the administrative approval. The effect of the notice: the city is not required to accept, solicit, or consider written or verbal testimony as part of the process. Failure of a property owner to receive mail notice shall not invalidate approval provided by the city has complied with the mailing requirement.
I'm sorry to take over here, but I think we might also want to consider, I very much like what you said there, Jennifer. I think that's the comprehensive amount of information. I think that it should be incumbent on us, if it's not already, to send out a notice of the decision. Maybe it already is, so that as a follow-up, the people that were in the notice area know when it's come full circle, whether it was approved or approved with new conditions or declined, just so that they know, the people in the notice area know how that shook out.
Is that a similar process to, like you mentioned, chickens, right? Would it be a similar type process to that?
So chickens are still harder. You actually have to get your neighbors to sign off in a buffer of chickens. And they have the ability to repeal that approval as well. if the chickens become an issue.
There is a right to appeal as well. A written appeal stating the basis for the appeal must be filed with the city manager within 10 days after the date of the notice. The city manager will review the appeal and make a final determination on the revocation. The decision of the city manager is final.
Can that decision be ministerial at the option of the director? Or does it have to be administrative?
Okay, so are you asking if these decisions can go to the council? They're really not appropriate to go to planning commission. This is not a land use issue. This is a resolution that was enacted specifically to kind of avoid that level of process. So are you asking? Oh, well, yay, because I wasn't sure what your question was.
So are we good with A, or what changes? Hearing all the backup from Jennifer.
Well, I just if it's can I ask the question if our notice requirements make it incumbent on the city to notice the outcome? Is that already built into our notification?
So we have different types of notifications for land use processes, which this is not. It's a resolution. Some land use actions enable a notice to be sent out prior to a decision being made, saying, provide us comments before we issue this decision. There are a few decisions in which we make the decision and then send a notice of the decision being made. But it's more of the latter, in which there is an application has been submitted. We send a notification that says we will be making a decision, haven't made that decision yet, provide us with comments, then we make the decision, and there's an opportunity to appeal that later on. The way that I think that this is written would be that we would make a decision and we would send notification of that decision. There could be an opportunity to appeal that decision that would go to the city administration office, to the city manager.
So the notice would be mailed 14 calendar days prior to the approval of a site.
And then city manager would have the final say if there was dispute or question.
If someone appealed it, correct.
Okay.
So I think before I could be comfortable with the staff recommendation in red, I think the first "or" in red maybe meant to say "and."
I think that was just given in that you have choices here. You could say, hey, we want to just keep it the same. Or you could say, hey, we're going to do a 200-foot buffer, and you get to kind of recommend to council what you think.
I think we could almost add the red to the black if we changed the first "or" to "and," so that it made it clear that the churches, for example, that are on residentially zoned ground and surrounded by residential uses also have to go through this application and noticing process, so that it doesn't seem like they can just carte blanche do it without the other newly injected notice and 200-foot components. So I think if you change the first "or" to "and," the red could be an addition to the existing in section A.
So we could do that, or we could start a new sentence that said each site must either meet the 200-foot buffer or be subject to administrative review with neighborhood notification.
Yeah, I'm not grammar police. I'm just was, yeah, just trying to tether those together.
Okay. So, question, different question, sorry. Everybody's okay with city manager appeal process, or do you want a city council appeal process? Or do you care?
I think city manager.
I concur.
Okay.
Do you want to vote or nodding of the heads?
I think this is all just discussion until we
Yeah,
put together. So I think it's entirely plausible that in May 4th, we're only so far down the list. And if perhaps in the interim between now and May 4th, you guys could kind of redraft the ones that we cover into a working version would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we're done with A, with the change, an addition, resentenced. B.
Okay, so letter B, how it currently reads, the property owner must register and receive approval for the location with the Roseburg Community Development Department. Staff would like to include the property must meet all city requirements, including having no unpaid city liens and ensuring all property taxes are fully paid at the time of the application and during operation.
I'd like to augment that with no outstanding violations. Perhaps that's embedded in the meet all city requirements, but if something already has some dereliction, I don't think we want to stack on top of a problem, build on a better foundation than that. So if perhaps, like I said, perhaps that's already embedded in the language of city requirements, but if you don't feel like it is, or if you feel like it needs to be made more clear, I think no outstanding violations is a good addition to the red section.
Doesn't hurt to add it, right? Or what do you think?
Yeah, we can add that. Absolutely.
Added.
Is that a consensus to, how are we feeling about that section?
Yeah. What are the other city requirements? Is there in that first section, the property must meet all city requirements, including.
Stu, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I think that's just referring to all these tent camping regulations. So when it says city requirements, it's referencing that.
Okay, so the rules in here. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Adhere to these rules plus those other items.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Now, C.
All right, moving on to C. So it currently reads, the property owner shall require a staff member or volunteer to be present on site while camping is occurring on the property to ensure rules for camping are being followed. City staff would like to add a designated site supervisor must be identified and responsible for on-site oversight, rule enforcement, and coordination with the city.
Comments?
I think that the designated site supervisor's contact should be on file with the city so that the city could make contact with whoever is in charge and during a time of, crisis or emergency or code enforcement or whatever. I think that we should embed that who that is and their contact info should be a part of the standing application or whatever file we are holding for that approval.
Okay, I think we should go about this differently. I'm going to start reading the issue, concern, and proposed recommendation so that you guys have the full information as to why that is entered on the policy itself. So a resident host may not provide meaningful supervision, enforcement, authority, or accountability. Lack of clarity may create enforcement challenges and reduce program oversight. So camp host is defined as a designated individual approved by the property owner who was identified in writing to the city prior to approval, at least 18 years of age, is responsible for on-site enforcement of all tent camping rules, is not counted towards the maximum tent occupancy at the location, is present on site during all designated camping hours, has authority to deny entry or require compliance from any individual at the location, is not a current resident or occupant of the tent camping location, and may not require or compel label from the site residents as a condition of occupancy or compliance.
Yes.
So that it can't be somebody that lives there. I mean, to me, I think as written, this might be prohibitive. Like I'm thinking of Compass, who uses the Methodist Church and has 4 locations on the Methodist Church property that they coordinate out of their Compass office. They run a homeless facility, but they also coordinate with churches. But, you know, I think that might be prohibitive if there's somebody monitoring those 4, which they do, just there's not somebody on site. I think that might be, as written, if it can't be somebody that, you know, we want to develop within that camp to be camping, the lead camper that's facilitating, you know, the main contact with the city, hitting that need, but also living there and just, you know, you're developing some skills in that individual. I think it, as written, it's kind of prohibitive. And I mean, with that other thing that it can't be somebody that lives there, I think that just limits a lot of agencies that, you know, might want to facilitate a model with putting little tiny homes on church properties. But if they have to facilitate somebody.
This isn't tiny homes. This is just strictly tent camping. So that would be under a different part of the code. But just to clarify that, not to take away from your point you're trying to make, which I understand is that supervisors should be able to be one of the residents. Am I following?
I think
that would be helpful for somebody running a tent camping area, that one of the people living in that, you know, you're teaching them some skills on development, managing others, and being that main point of contact. But I think, you know, if it can't be somebody that lives there, but I don't know, is kind of cost prohibitive and offers some challenges if it can't be one of the campers. And I think that, you know, kind of like a peer support type person in development and enabling that person to get some life skills at the same time.
I think the view was that they're part of the system that they're supposed to enforce, and this can create conflicts and can weaken their accountability amongst the campers.
It worked really good in Grapes of Wrath, though.
Up to you. Quickly, you may speak. Because I'm so nice.
You're kidding me. You know, it's like, it's cost prohibitive. Think about it. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Who's going to pay somebody to do those kind of things, to manage these kind of places? They're all gone. Close them all down. Let's throw them all out into Deer Creek Park and then get all the other services off of them. You know, this system has been good and has created 16,000 nights. It's had the same people that come to the top end there that serve and do what they're supposed to do. They become the host, and we make sure the city knows who the hosts are. That's all we should do on this.
Thank you.
I do agree that all hours seems onerous for one person or one entity to basically staff somebody. All hours is seems like a challenge.
Okay, so we need folks to weigh in on the current resident or occupant.
Can I ask Officer Sanders' opinion?
If you call him Captain Sanders.
What is the question?
I almost didn't know who you meant.
Captain Sanders, I'd appreciate your input on, because enforcement, at the end of the day, is going to fall to your department. What are your feelings if you're in a position to share them on how it would be if a potential camp team captain was a member of the encampment versus a staffed person from an entity? Does it create a hardship? I mean, obviously you'd love it if it was, but I'd like your thoughts on it.
It's kind of a complex question. I think from an enforcement standpoint and from a first responder aspect, what we need is somebody who is capable for us to interact with at the time, and that we never know when that's going to be. Somebody who has the designated authority to help us make decisions on what the rules are, who can be present, who cannot, and so forth. I think that having some type of criteria to establish what's reasonable, it would be a solid idea. There's all walks of life out there, so I don't want to say somebody is or isn't capable. I think that there has to be some type of a screening process, or it would be helpful. I don't know if that helps you at all.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to add, I mean, conceivably, you're talking about 3 full-time positions per camp. To make that 4, to make that, it's not really cost prohibitive. And I'm going to back up to my, in a past life, I worked for Oxford House, and they create leaders, right? So it's peer-to-peer mentoring. And so I've seen how that works. I've seen that it works really well by creating these up-and-coming leaders, and then we're not forcing somebody to not be able to run a camp because they can't afford to pay 3 to 4 full-time positions to oversee. I mean, it's just my opinion, but I know that I've seen these people that come in and you create these leaders, and then they go on to do really great things. So
Yeah, and from our perspective, we need somebody that is going to be responsible, that we can contact, because some issues that we've had, fires, things like that, when you have recurring issues, that tells you that whoever's supposed to be in charge of that camp either doesn't know the rules or isn't enforcing the rules. So how do we make those changes? And so that's the type of thing that we want to make sure is happening, is that there's somebody there that's enforcing these policies. These are often in neighborhoods, things like that. So just to be able to make sure that when we set a resolution that we're not constantly having to go out and police it. And we have real life experience with some of these, with some of these issues. Thank you, sorry, that was a little bit harsh. So if we want to go to the number 2, camp host definition and accountability, if we want to go through those bullets, if there's ones you want to pull out, now would be the time to kind of go through those. And if we're just making, looks like this, we're just making suggestions, but we're bringing them to you to kind of guide us on what you think the right thing to do is. None of these are in concrete, right? That's why we're having these discussions.
No, I agree with Gene. Like on that wraparound support services that you need with the peer support, but that's with C. I'm just looking at, like, it depends on what size the agency is that's running that tent camp that's going to have that funding source, because you're looking at, like Gene stated, 3 full-time people per camp that you're looking at up here is probably going to make at least 40,000 without benefits.
Yeah, and we're not trying to put that kind of burden on
Yeah.
this program.
And that's why I was questioning that one, is just like, if somebody like Bernie's doing this a little more grassroots level, or an agency, they're not going to have that funding ability to fund those positions at this point in time. They're going to have to find a funding source for it. And so I just, as written, I was just wanting to make sure what that looks like.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everyone that Bernie's camps are grandfathered in, so this won't affect what he already has.
So did you find the page that we're talking about?
I finally did, yes. I think.
Yeah, I think it's labeled discussion items A46, and then it's like the paragraphs right before one says the proposed updates focus on clarifying standards. Right?
No, we're on camp host definition for number 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, that's better.
Okay, so there's a list of bullets there. So identified to the city prior to approval. Does that make sense to folks? At least 18 years of age.
Yep, that's good.
Responsible for on-site enforcement of tent camping rules.
Yep.
This seems like one you had questions about. Is present on-site during all designated camping hours.
Yeah, I think that might be burdensome.
So available by phone or?
Yeah, just available by phone or some way to contact them.
Do we have an expectation for being on site? Meaning at all?
I just want to talk about something. I get to speak to a lot of homeless people at the hospital and interview them, and we're talking about a tent camp. And if you think about if you camp in the summer, there's always a host within those camps. So I think kind of what Bernie's got going as far as having a host in the camp, it's a really good thing. There's somebody present, but I think for sure we need somebody who's responsible and reliable and all of those things. The other benefit that I've seen from that is it really does help to mentor people. I spoke to one specific gentleman who does that in a camp, did a lot of interviewing with him for over a week, and I was pretty impressed with what he was doing as far as attending that camp and then getting ready to train the next person when he left that camp. So I do see some benefit in that and having somebody there that is actually housed there. And it's just because I deal with it one-on-one daily. So I just wanted to add that 2 cents. I think it is good to have somebody who's living there as the host. I don't see that as a burden or an issue as long as they're responsible. And the person I spoke to had been doing it for quite some time, and I feel like he was a good candidate for what he was doing.
And I think we're trying to add a component that the city would be notified who that person is. And then if it changes, that we're notified who that person is. And Officer Chavez may know that. That doesn't mean that Stu in community development or somebody else that needs to reach out is gonna, or the fire department is gonna know that.
So if that's the case, are we gonna strike is not a current resident or occupant of the camp?
That's the question.
I really feel it needs to be somebody that's there and is hosting that camp. I mean, I've been doing the homeless stuff for a lot of years, and those guys all know each other. They know who are the good seeds in there. They know everything going on. I walk in those camps. I've talked to a lot of them. I spend daily time with them, and I really feel like it should be somebody that is in that camp. That's all I got at that. I don't think it needs to be a paid position. I mean, those people are living there. They're doing things to live there. You know, they have a safe place, they know their place. Yeah.
So we would need clarity on if it could be anybody or specifically someone who is already on site as a resident.
My opinion would be that it could be somebody who was on site, or it could be somebody who is not on site. But I don't think we should limit that. They should not be a current resident.
So you want to take that bullet out. I'm going to circle back to do we have an expectation that they're on site for at least a certain amount of time? And what would that be?
Majority of the time? I don't know.
Meaning they don't have to sleep there, or what are you thinking? Just asking.
It definitely is going to have to be somebody who's there, because a lot of the events that take place are in the evening. You know, we ER calls all night long, so it's definitely needing to be somebody, I think, that's there, that sees what's going on.
Okay.
And knows the people.
So when she said all designated camping hours, she was referring to our time, place, and manner, or so we can bring those hours forward. They vary throughout the year, so which would mean they would be a resident. Well, they're going to be on site overnight, so likely a resident.
This may be small potatoes, but as a condition, I think they should have to have a phone. Or we're talking about a group of people who maybe do or don't have phones. I'm not on the ground with that, so I don't know, but I think it is that if should be a part of the conditions is this person who is has to have their own phone and it's on file with the city.
Is there consensus for that?
Phones? Yes. Okay. And who gets that initial information to disseminate through the staff at the city? Who's the contact?
Well, it should be submitted as part of their application process.
Okay. So everyone sees it. Okay.
We process the applications in the community development department, so I'd anticipate if there was a change to whoever this supervisor is, then the applicant would just make us aware of here's a new supervisor and their contact information. We'd update it.
Thank you. We good to go to D?
So all the following bullets you guys wanted to keep in or remove or discuss? At least the last one may not require compel labor from site residents as a condition of occupancy or compliance.
It's not a state law that you can't require labor for services for something.
We've been unable to get clarification on that.
Okay. So I think we can strike is not a current resident. That would be, you can just get rid of that bullet point, and the others I think I'm okay with. Because designated camping hours is not all day, right? It's not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was afraid.
And we can add clarity.
Okay.
I wanted one clarification on like the phone resource. That's a very, like, on people that are living this life right now, a majority of our clients don't have like an active phone line. They do use Wi-Fi, text, but they don't have an active phone service. And so that might be a barrier we might just want to think about. I mean, I think it's going to go back to the context of like, what does this tent camp look like? Who is it run by? Are they supplying this individual phone? But a majority of the people that are living unsheltered do not have phone access. So that might be a barrier even with somebody living presently in that situation. So I think we need to be careful with that, or like, how are we going to connect that person with phone services? I mean, you probably experience that too. They don't have phones. They have Wi-Fi. So that's going to be a gap for people that are living this that are in that camp that are like the host supervisor, because it is a barrier.
I think they've got to cross that barrier to be the person in charge. I think if they can't cross that threshold either by themselves or as something that's shared by them from the camp host or the designee, if they can't cross that threshold, they haven't put themselves in a position to be in charge. You know?
We just have to make it part of.
You know, they can't be relying on Wi-Fi, and you know, if they want to elevate to that position of being team captain, this is one of the requirements. More is expected of the team captain. That's how I see it. I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I'm just telling you how I feel.
The reality, unless there's a payment and this person's employed and getting some funding to be able to do that, the reality is these people cannot afford that. They don't have jobs. They're living in unsheltered, and it is a barrier. So I think we need to be realistic in that sense of like, it's all in the context. If this person is an employee and they're getting a rate of pay, that is a totally different story. If they're expected to put this position and do it on their own, that is a burden that us up here and a majority of the audience are not living that life and don't understand that. But if you don't have money to survive, the phone is the first to go. So I think we need to have a realistic look at that, in all honesty. That's just my...
So for me, it's about if there's a medical emergency, how do they call for help? I mean, somebody there should be able to have a phone to be able to dial 911 if they needed to. So even if it's a phone that's assigned to the camp, not necessarily the host, that the host keeps track of, but having a way to be able to call and say there's a medical emergency, I need an ambulance.
I believe we have some resources. Is it through You Can Adapt? There's some other places that do the simple phone. So I think there are some resources available that we could easily look into to do that, where one could be assigned. I mean, we give people stuff with resources like that all the time. So I think there would be one available. We could be able to do that somewhere.
It'd be case by case, but I agree with you, Betty.
Okay, so we need a little bit clearer where we landed on the phone.
We'll still require a phone, and if they don't have access, we'll figure it out through
Who's the-
resources.
Well, the we's not the city.
I know,
Okay.
correct.
So as far as these go, we're still requiring access to a phone.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I vote yes for that.
We are on D now.
So this is regarding temporary nature of structures. So wood platforms and micro shelters blur the distinction between temporary tents and more permanent encampment structures. That's further down. Hold on. So D is the property owners shall provide on-premises access to a minimum of 2 restrooms or potable toilets per location. The staff didn't have any recommendation on this. The operator recommends scaling sanitation requirements based on camp size. Like, as an example, 1 toilet per 5 tents.
Are we okay with that?
So the scaling comes down to some other things the operator would want to change that are later under, looks like H. So I don't know if we want to keep going, and then once that decision's made, you can circle back to whether or not the portable toilet question is impacted.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, let's circle back. So that means we're on E with a hold on D.
There were no changes to E.
That's right, thank you. Then F has a couple.
Yeah, so camping, as it's adopted right now, camping is limited to fabric structures, tents, and other similar accommodations. Micro shelters and shelters with electricity shall require a separate permit. Vehicle camping shall require a separate permit, and vehicles shall be subject to the provision listed in the Roseburg Municipal Codes. Staff would like to include limited raised platforms not exceeding 12 inches in height may be allowed to improve sanitation and safety. Any structures exceeding temporary use standards shall require appropriate building permits. The operator recommends allowing alternative shelter types such as huts, yurts, platform-based shelters, and converted Connex containers with permits. I will note that these type of shelters are outside of the scope of this resolution and would need to comply with our zoning and building code requirements or qualify for a state exemption.
Thank you.
Can I ask for clarification on the blue comments that are referenced as operator? Those are from whom?
Mr. Woodard.
So we're looking at the limited raised platforms, number 4.
We're wanting to make sure that no permanent or semi-permanent structures would go unpermitted at a tent camping location.
Can someone tell me the entry level understanding of the car camping and how that relates to how that, or is it just a totally separate thing and it's just got its own?
It's got its own resolution. It's a separate, similar resolution that nobody has actually implemented.
So this number 4 would just allow raised platforms, which could not go over 12 inches high, right? So like if they build some kind of raised platform for the tent to be on, it's allowing that.
Correct.
Questions, comments on a raised platform? Are we good? It's kind of. You okay, Jean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Betty? Yeah. Okay. We're good.
Good with
leaving number 4 intact.
Okay.
As written.
And number 5.
Yeah, I think I'm good with allowing alternative shelter types because there's going to be some permitting involved with that, right?
So that would be separate from what this resolution is, which is tent camping.
Okay.
So if we're going to start talking about those, we need to start over because that's a different type of. So this is, because it was tents, it's specifically outside of our land use code. If we start talking about permanent shelters, that's a different, we probably shouldn't be avoiding land use code. We need to go through the normal process. I'll use the Mission, since we've talked about them a lot lately. They have had to go through conditional use permits and follow all of the land use regulations when they've had to expand in the past. When they have chosen to expand in the past.
That are in those, where they're putting those in, they go through the permit process.
Yeah, so that they did go through a permit process, but they are actually eligible for the state exemption. And so they didn't go through the conditional use permit process.
Okay.
So we are on G.
Can I ask a question? I just want to make sure that number 5, that we're not allowing the converted connexes as part of what we're doing today, correct? That needs its own.
That's right. That would not be part of this resolution. There is a process that already exists. If one wanted to do that type of homeless shelter, they could apply through a conditional use permit. in the appropriate zones that enable a homeless shelter under a conditional use permit provision, or they could try to apply for the state exemption. But there's already existing avenues for that.
Yeah, and Mr. Woodard also acknowledged that a permit would be needed.
Good, okay. Then to G, with nothing, no change or additions. So H.
Yeah, so as currently adopted, no more than 10 tents or approved structures are allowed per location. And now we have options for you guys to consider. So option A, which is the staff recommendation, is to maintain a maximum of 10 tents per site, including contiguous parcels. Oh, contiguous. Option B, which is an staff alternative, is allow capacity to be determined based on site-specific factors, including available sanitation facilities, site size, and safety considerations. The operator feedback recommends replacing the 10 tent camp with a size-based standard. As an example he provided was 1 tent per 400 square feet of enclosed camp area. So the concern here is that 10 tents on a single parcel may present different impacts than 30 tents across multiple combined lots. So we're just trying to set clear standards. Lot configurations may unintentionally increase occupancy beyond what the infrastructure and surrounding areas can reasonably support.
I'm thinking like just putting a max on 10 sites, so if you have 3 parcels and they might be large parcels, but then you're limiting it to 10 tents in those 3 large parcels. I don't know. I think I'm okay with it going with a, size and kind of evaluating each of those sites.
Who would evaluate the site?
Not it.
Stu's smiling, but that doesn't mean he's the one. But do you have something to say?
Yes, well, so again, we want to be a little careful with unlimited. So I don't know if there's a maximum. I just completely lost my train of thought, excuse me. There's always the actual land use process, right, to go through to do things. So this was supposed to be a simplified, smaller process. So if you have several acres, does that mean that you can do hundreds of tents? Doesn't feel like what this was set up for. So if 10 isn't the number that you want to put forward, is there a maximum where it starts feeling that you have to have more than one site host, that we actually have to start looking at a lot more criteria than just this real basic few toilets, some garbage, and a site host?
I kind of like the 400 square feet per site, per tent, because then you can easily take the size of the parcel and just divide it by 400.
So 100 in an acre.
Oh, that's a lot. But
I did that math in my head. I'll double check it.
43,000.
What about flexibility, like a permitting process to allow for more in that area? Like, I'm just imagining we have 150 people in the point. That means we need to have 15 camps, and it manifests kind of the issue with having a camp captain for this agency, the phone.
Yeah, there's a land use process that they can go through. Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with Ken. Is like, if the size of the property allowed like 40 people, it might make it more manageable for this organization that's operating that 40 people with their 3 people managing the site, for 24-hour service. It might make it more manageable, and it might work if it met all the other criteria of being 200 feet away from out on Diamond Lake or something, then the property that meets all the other requirements, but maybe a permitting if is going to be larger than that, but not limiting it.
What would the city call a bigger version of this? If there was a big version that was like the next step up from this, like this is limited at X, and then the next thing would be called what?
So the thing we want to be careful about, we're keeping the requirements very low. So it would be good to have a cap. So if it's 400 square feet and somebody's got an acre, that's 108 tents. All of a sudden, that's a lot. We are not requiring wraparound services. We are not requiring, we're very, very basic things. And so we want to be careful about providing a huge amount of this where people, well, we'll get to how long can they stay and is that being enforced or is it going to be enforced? But if wraparound services aren't actually being provided, are people moving up in the housing continuum, or is this just a place where they're at? So I know the city's goal has always been, let's get people into supported services, get them into the housing continuum. We're not requiring that with tent camping. So let's be a little careful about how big you want to allow.
I agree. I feel like we've set a very low barrier for the PIC, right? And so I think we have to match that with a size that is reasonable and allow, not saying that we don't want or wouldn't permit or consider as a city a bigger, more institutionalized size version of this, but I don't think we want to match that size or allow that massification under the criteria that we're doing here. So I'm in support of the 10, and then if somebody wants to do something bigger than 10, I'm sure there's a administrative mechanism for that application, and at that point I'm sure there's going to be a higher threshold of fire and ambulatory, and I think wraparound services was the term that Nikki used, and I think a 10-person cap is a reasonable place to ask for more information and higher standards. The more people are at risk, this person is responsible for more people, and quite frankly, considering that you know that all of this costs money, it's unlikely that someone is going to undertake something bigger than 10 without being an entity and not just a person. So I'm in favor of a modest cap to match up against the modest other thresholds that we've established here, not let a very low management threshold match up against a big site.
Could I add just maybe some perspective to that, Ben? So right now, if you kind of asked what's bigger, there are provisions that exist. One can apply through a conditional use permit if the zone allows for a homeless shelter. One can apply for an exemption that can do something much larger than what is here. This resolution was driven by council at the time indicating, hey, we want to provide an easier threshold so that individuals wouldn't necessarily have to go through those other more extensive processes. As a result, council wanted to not put up a lot of barriers, but at the same time have some very black and white criteria that were kind of low-level entry types of situation. If one wants to go beyond that, there is a process for that. And I think it's just important that as we look at reviewing these criteria, we don't necessarily blur those lines too far. There is a process that exists if someone wants to do a pretty extensive homeless shelter. They just need to go through that. If they don't, then there's this much smaller type of resolution that one could utilize.
I'd like to augment that with I think that the 10 unit, the proposed 10 unit cap, instead of saying tents, should say something like campsites or campers or something, so that if we end up with a site that has an amalgamation of tent camping and, let's say, car camping, that they can't stack those and end up with a bigger contingent of people, that 10 under the small streamlined version, that 10 campsites, camped tents, cars, whatever, that 10 was the maximum regardless of what the format was, so that you couldn't have 10 of these and X of these in the car resolution and X of these in this other resolution, and use the streamlined thing to really make a cake layer of a bunch of things in one spot. I think the 10 should be 10 units, not just 10 tents.
So we have always assumed that some tents are going to have double occupancy. So even when it was 10, even in its current form, we never thought that necessarily meant 10 people. That might be 20 people, because there's often 2 people in a tent.
And to be
so
clear,
if we were to do that, we're actually getting more restrictive, which I don't believe is the intent.
I didn't mean to be the occupancy of the tent, like not, but that a car, for example, would be a placeholder for a tent, so that it was 10 shelters, not 10 tents with no other limitations. So 10 units, and the units might have double occupancy like you're saying, but you couldn't have 10 and other homeless uses at the same time, or you might end up with triple.
Okay, so that might be another statement in here, that it's not combined with other resolutions.
I guess you could just say, like, if we did, and it doesn't have to be 400 square feet, but if you thought about 400 square feet as a measure, a unit of measure, then, you could say up to so many 400 square foot units. And then if you have, like a quarter acre lot, that would be way less than 100, right? So you're at 25 on there. That will still have the limit of 10, but then you could kind of address it so that somebody, if you have 300, or you're still limiting. You could have 10 people really close together in one little unit if we don't give kind of a minimum distance for each of those units.
So if I hear you correctly, you want to use the minimum of 400 square feet and still have a maximum of 10, or do you want to raise that maximum at all?
I think 10 and 2 matches with 2 bathrooms.
So I came in here thinking I knew what I was going to decide, and then after listening to Ben talk, no, it's a, to be able to have site control, because I was thinking more tents if it's a bigger piece of property, put more tents. But if you have one person there that's the site manager, and then you put 50 tents in there, site control could be a bear. And so I like the idea of 10 tents. So you opened my eyes a little bit, because I was thinking kind of, save everybody. Right?
Oh, there are other avenues for the bigger units, right? So we're not saying the bigger ideas aren't equally or meritorious. We're just saying, for this simple resolution, for this stopgap resolution, as I see it, we're trading modest barriers for modest opportunity.
Anybody have questions? You guys, you're clear? We agreed.
So I think I heard 400 square foot per tent to make sure that we're not too dense, and up to 10 tents.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, if we circle back up to D,
We might have time for it.
Yeah, so D, as it is currently adopted, the property owner shall provide on-premises access to a minimum of 2 restrooms or portable toilets per location. The operator recommends scaling sanitation requirements based on camp size, and he gave an example of 1 toilet per up to 5 tents.
For this, since we're going to limit it to 10, then I don't think we need to adjust that. Right? We're only going to have 10 tents on a site anyway, so I think we're set with that.
We were just talking about, since it's not, I mean, 1 tent, like you said, doesn't just come with 2 people sometimes. You know, sometimes there's 3 or 4. So is 1 potty going to cover 30 people in this 10, you know, or does there need to be 2 potties?
So as it's currently adopted, it's a minimum of 2 restrooms per location currently.
Okay, that covers it.
So we're good on D, 2 restrooms per 5, or per 10. 1 for 5. Do we want to keep going, try to tackle one more, or pause and adjourn?
I think we only have 3 minutes, so I don't know if we can.
Yeah.
I'm happy to work on these and then incorporate them and then bring it back at the next meeting.
And we would begin with the next one that we're working on.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I just want to say I appreciate you giving us the background of what predicated each thing as we come to it, because otherwise we're kind of in a vacuum. So thank you for kind of giving us the background as we go through each one.
You're very welcome.
Thank you also. And thank you, Commission. Thank you, audience and staff. Meeting adjourned.